Welcome to today's episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles, the where, the who, and the how'd they get there. This morning, I'm so happy to have as my guest Joe Tringali. Many of you know Joe from his various businesses in the downtown area, but I am always interested in the backstory of how people got here, how they created what they have. So, Joe, were you born in St. Augustine?
Yes, I was, Karen, and thank you for having me.
You're
It's
welcome.
an honor. I feel like it's an honor because, like we talked about before, I'm just a ordinary Joe, So,
That's what we want,
all
though.
right, good.
Ordinary people to tell their stories,
Yeah.
which are not ordinary.
Well, that's true. I guess everybody's got a story.
So I wouldn't have guessed that you were born here. I would have guessed you were a New Yorker.
A lot of people think that, but actually, my grandparents immigrated through New York in 21 or 22
From Italy?
from Italy, and he got into the shrimping business. He had
Oh, I didn't know you had a shrimping connection.
Yeah, he big time. In fact, we had the property where Hurricane Patty's currently is. My family owned that, and then my uncle and my father both had shrimp boats. So I think at one time they had like 4 or 5 of them. So they were part of the original shrimpers, not as big as the Versagis, but they had an impact on what we were doing here. So I was born here. My father was actually born here. My uncle was born here. So they were like the first, and my uncle since has passed away, but my dad was born in 43 and I was born in 63, and loved this town so much that I never had really an inclination to leave.
Well, it's a really unique place,
It
right?
sure is,
Not
yeah.
only do you have the history here, but
Hmm.
there's just not a lot of places where you're going to find that European downtown and then the cool, laid back beach vibe
Yeah,
and Florida weather.
sure. And that's why probably you came here. You came here for some reason and loved it. I don't know if you had roots here before, but you
No,
were telling me
I actually moved here. I was born in Wisconsin, but I moved here from Las Vegas
yeah,
because
you
my
told me
husband was
that.
working for Citigroup, and so
Oh,
he took
okay.
a position here. And I didn't know what I actually moved to Jacksonville
Uh-huh.
first. I didn't know what I was moving to, and I hated Jacksonville.
Right,
So I was
sure.
ready to move back out
It's
west.
totally different,
Yeah,
35 miles
yeah.
away.
We came down to
Hmm.
the island and went into Sea Colony, and he looked at me and said, "Will this work?" And I said, "Yeah, this will work just fine," and never left.
Sure.
But so I don't know if you realize I interviewed John Versaggi recently about the
Sure,
shrimping
and he's
industry.
doing he's trying to do that whole story and do something I think at the shipyards. In fact, he's been in contact with my father
Yeah.
about some
Oh, your
of the.
father's still alive?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So he can
He's
give
here
so
locally.
much history then.
Sure, I should have had him come with me.
Oh, I might interview him.
Yeah, right. But he's he got out of the shrimping business probably, and I think somewhere in the early '80s he got his real estate license and became a broker. And one time he was president of the board of realtors, and he didn't like shrimping that much. It just was too inconsistent to make a living. And at that time they were doing the turtle excluding devices, and that made it difficult. So
Too
he,
much regulation,
yeah, it
right?
was a lot of regulation, and then it's so weather. You're dependent on good weather, and I'm a fisherman, but when it's offshore and it's rough and it's 6 foot seas, I don't want to go fishing. Yet, if you have to depend on that for your income,
Right.
you have to go. So,
Right.
so he
Right.
got out of that and got into real estate and was successful with that, and he still lives in Crescent Beach. And I was blessed to have a great, great family. I mean, I can truly say that.
And where did you live growing up?
I lived on the island, probably 2 blocks from where I live now. I got a chance to buy a house back over there, and I wanted to go over there, and we've raised our kids in Marsh Creek.
See, I wouldn't have guessed that you were an island boy growing up.
Yeah, I was on, but now we left when I was 13 and moved to Prairie Creek, which is off Wildwood
Yeah,
Drive, and I
yeah.
thought that was the greatest thing because it was a nice, brand new house. We had all these trails to ride motorcycles and all, but after about a year, I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm out here, and I couldn't wait to get my driver's license because that was like in the middle of nowhere.
I was just going to say, that had to be
There
really
was
far
nothing.
out there.
Yeah, there was nothing out there at that time. So
What'd you do for fun when you were growing up?
I was always into motorcycles and dirt bikes and motocross bikes and stuff. And I wasn't big into sports. I mean, I like to play neighborhood sports, but I didn't play sports in high school. It's funny we were talking about business and everything. I think at an early age I got involved in really, kind of like a little entrepreneur. I mean, real early, like at 8 or 9. I mean, I used to jump in dumpsters on the island and collect cans, aluminum cans, and I was just fascinated with numbers, and I was fascinated with money and what money could do for you. And back then, it wasn't it didn't have the same meaning. Of course, it was to buy bikes and toys. Now it's different, but so I think as far as being an entrepreneur, I got an early start on it, and then I had such a great support staff with my stepfather, my real father, my mother. They were always kind of doing different things, so I got a good lesson from them. And so
So your dad was an entrepreneur. Was your
my
stepfather?
stepfather is where I actually learned the majority of what I do now. He had a Shell gas station. My parents divorced very early. I think I was 5, and I was blessed to have such a loving father and even a stepfather. I have step brothers, and I have a half sister, and I felt no different growing up than I was his true
Yeah,
blood,
that is
and vice
wonderful.
versa. And same with my mother. She's not here anymore, but she passed away at 62, and which is very early.
That's young.
Yeah, breast cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so but my father's been so supportive, my real father, and I couldn't have got where I was with all with none of their help and everything. They've helped me in many ways.
So you started collecting cans.
Yeah,
and
I
made
mean,
some
I
money to
jumped
buy
in,
bikes.
and if we found bottles, because back then, you'd return the bottles and you
Mm-hmm.
get like 10
Yeah,
cents, and my
yeah.
mom would, she was so supportive. I would load them up in the back of her Buick Electra 225, and we tie the trunk lid down. We take them to the aluminum recycling thing, and I'd probably get like $8, and to me that was a lot of
Yeah,
money,
it didn't take a lot to buy things back then.
Right. But I was probably like the neighborhood trash boy, going through dumpsters and like I said, when I found a bottle that was 10 cents, that was like a jackpot. And I don't know if this is true. My mom told me stories that one time I had a garage sale when she was at work, and I sold the plants in the front yard. And so I don't remember that. And she said that, former Judge Watson, who's not with us anymore, he came by later and said, India, Joseph sold me those 2 plants out there and everything. But she said it, so I'm gonna go with it. But I was just one of those ones that would buy like something for they used to make these tool kits that had like a $49.95 retail price on them. You could buy them for like $20. So I'd buy them, sell them to my friends for $30 or something like that. When I was like 13 or 14, and then I was always working, so it didn't give me a chance to really live a school life. And truthfully, I wasn't really good in school. I was a C student, and I always thought I had a learning disability. My mom told me when I was like 27 that, they said you had ADD when you were in 3rd grade, but I never got you tested. So I think I probably did have a little bit of, attention deficit. So, but I think that's one reason why I can multitask too.
It seems to me that people who were really popular in high school probably aren't, my experience when I look back, they
Uh-huh.
don't go on to do really interesting things.
Sure.
It's like you peak too early.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny because I think they have such a high expectation that for them to succeed, it's a little bit tougher for them. Where nobody expected much out of me.
And
I mean,
if you fail,
honestly.
it's not a big
Yeah.
deal, right?
I mean, I got a high school diploma in my house over there, and I remember when I took my SATs, they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be a gas station attendant." And I took the SATs, and they said, "We think that you can do a little better than that." But to me, that's what I wanted to be because that was just what I enjoyed, and that's what I was growing up around.
So did you like working on cars too?
Yeah, I actually had a point in my life early on that I was somewhat of a mechanic. I was never a great mechanic, but I mean, I could do quite a bit. I went to some of this schooling because back then the service stations had, repair garages.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't have the big stores like they
Right,
do now.
right.
And in fact, when we rebuilt Connor Shell back in '08, we got rid of the bays. We had 3 bays. And at that time, we owned the tire store across the street, which is where Whetstone's Chocolate is now. So we just moved all the repair business over there.
So so you own Carmelo's
Uh-huh.
and the Shell station. Is that the Shell station that your stepfather owned
No,
originally?
he owned one at 16 and 95, the one that's there now. It wasn't like it is now. It's since been rebuilt. But like I said, my parents got divorced when I was 5, so I think in 70 or 69, my mom met Terry Fry was his name. And then I started hanging around out there as a young kid when he hired me and actually was paying me when I was 13, so I got a great education. I remember he paid me $2 an hour, which back then was not far from minimum wage. And so I'd work in the summers, and he taught me so much. He taught me how to, you need to be the best at every job description you have. So, I mean, my first job was basically cleaning the bathrooms.
painting curbs and all.
Your story reminds me a lot of Chris Ways, who,
Yeah,
an
oh yeah.
entrepreneur at heart, and he was a little
Very
entrepreneur
similar.
as a
Sure.
kid, and
And he
learned a
still
lot.
he still does a lot of different things. Boat lifts, the restaurants.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
That
know.
reminds me a lot of Chris's
He's a
story.
realtor at one time.
Yeah.
He's just Chris's, and I've done a lot of things, a lot more than people know about, and a lot of things have been very tough. Like we all went through that real estate bubble in '06 and '07, and then when it hit in '09, it was very tough on people, including myself. I survived it, thank God, because I always had a good income with the retail operation.
So what else did you do before you started Carmelo's? What did you do when you got out of high school?
Actually, when I got out of high school, my mom wanted me to go to college, and I tried for a year and a half, and I got like 18 hours, credit hours, and I just said, Mom, I can't do it. She said,
Where'd you
please
go?
just St. John's River, just something local,
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
night classes.
yeah.
But like I said, I just wasn't really good at school. So, and then I went to, got my real estate license. 'Cause at that time, my dad was a broker, so I think at 21 years old, I had a real estate license. And I wasn't really good at that either. I'm not good at
I would think you would be good at that.
I think I thought I would be good too, and I think with him helping me, but I just don't think I was engaged in it like I should have been. I was still 21. I was single.
Yeah,
So
you got
I
other things on your
remember
mind.
at the open houses, I would, they would stage some of them, like when we were selling Coquina Lakes over there for Irwin Carasso. My dad put me in one of those condos, and it was staged as a room. I remember that I put a bell on the inside of the door, and I would sleep because I was out all night. And I'd sleep in the bed, and I remember people would walk up, and I'd hear that bell go off, and it was like a fire alarm. But, those were that's when I was, 21, 22, single, and trying to figure out where I was going. I actually left the service station business for a little bit. So my stepdad sent me to Shell Dealer School. They actually have a school, and if you go through that school, then technically you can have your own Shell station. My stepdad's idea was, well, if something comes available, you can take that one because you pretty much know what to do. I just need to get you engaged in it and responsible, because he was even probably disappointed in me because like I said again, I was probably immature at that age.
Well, we all were.
Well, I think so. There's some that are a lot more mature, and I think in his mind, he wanted me to be a little more driven, and I was very driven, but I was trying to do it my way. And I think when you're a parent, I have daughters in the
Yeah.
business, and it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
difficult to
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
You know.
You got to know when to let them go
Yeah,
and when
that's
to
right.
tell them, no, you have to do it this way. And that was also that was the 70s, right?
That was
Late 70s?
no, that was 80s because
Early 80s?
yeah, that was I was like that was in mid 80s, for
Yeah,
me, because
yeah.
I was like 21 years old. So, and I've always have been driven, and like I said, I think drive is something you're almost born with. I really do, because I look back at my age at 6, 7 years old. How did I get like I am today? And I still to this day, I'm always thinking about what I can do. Not so much to make a lot of money, but so much to keep my mind occupied. Like, I'm sure and most people know that I have the Giggling Gator. I bought it next door, and I've been sitting around thinking about what to do with that will, enhance the neighborhood, not affect my parking, because I bought it technically for a parking lot.
Yeah.
Because parking is such an issue.
Yeah.
And it was an expensive parking lot, but so I got a couple ideas, and I think, once I get situated a little bit with my new house and everything, and we get all moved in and have one house, and right now we have 2 houses still, I think I'll do something over there that's going to be kind of neat.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Just something that will be a enhancement. It might not even be a restaurant. It might be something else. I got a couple things I'm thinking about. So.
Well, I think we're all wondering what you're going to do with that and waiting to see what you're going to do with that.
Yeah,
You have a pretty good track record.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't feel like I've done anything spectacular. I live by one golden rule, and I think that's why I am able to have some freedom in the restaurant business. Is that I think that I put myself in the position of every person, whether it's a customer, an employee, anybody. I don't care. I don't judge. I treat people with respect because I would like that back, and I think that that's so simple to do. And I find so many people in business that feel like there's 2 standards, and I also couldn't do it without my loving wife, my daughters. We're a family business, so we have a bunch of different job descriptions, and we all just pitch in.
Is your wife from here?
No, she's from actually Middleburg. She doesn't like me saying Middleburg. She wants me to say Orange Park, but I'll go ahead
But
and
the
say
truth is
Middleburg.
Middleburg.
Yeah,
How'd you meet
actually
her?
the truth is Orange Park, but when I met her, she was in Middleburg. So
How'd you
I
meet?
met her at the beach, and I definitely married up. She was down at the beach one day, and I rode by, and I thought I was a hot shot. I had a red Corvette and everything, and she didn't even really pay me the time of day. I was selling
Uh-oh.
real estate at the time. I got out and went up and started talking to her, and she says I got to work on his dress, because I had on like some funny pants and just some polyester pants. I was selling real
Yeah.
estate. I wanted to look the part, but it didn't fit me at that age, But
She saw potential.
I guess I don't know. I still don't, understand how. But people look at us. We're one of those kind of couples that people look at us and be like, "How do you get that?" So
You've been married for quite a while,
31 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
good for you.
yeah.
Good for
And I
you.
got two great daughters and two grandbabies, and so try to spend as much time as we can.
Well, that's the beauty of this small town life, I
Hmm.
think, is that it's a little bit slower paced, even though it can be busy when you're running all the businesses that you have. It's still not, it's still slower paced, and
Sure,
people value things like family here,
they
where,
sure do.
you get to the bigger cities and your life just becomes a little bit
Hmm.
crazier.
And it's so funny how still in this town, and if you're deeply connected, like I feel like I am, that people can really weed out the fakes. And so
Yeah.
it's one of those kind of towns that if you come in this town and you're, you've done a great job with what you've done, and I
Thank
always
you.
respect that.
Thank you.
And you got a great reputation, but there's been people that've tried to do what you do, come from a bigger city, and and they've not succeeded because they've tried to have that big city mentality.
Well, I've had mentors who have really helped me a lot. Len Weeks has been a
Sure.
mentor of mine.
Yeah.
Jerry Dixon was a
Oh
mentor
yeah.
of mine, and
Those are
I really listened.
and that's so easy to do, isn't it? Isn't it easy to do? It's easy to come here and listen
I learned a lot
and
from him.
if you have a lot of pride and a lot of ego, sometimes it's better just to not show those sides of you and just learn a lot, because every town is different, and this is definitely a unique town. And there's a lot of division right now, which upsets me
It's sad,
dearly.
isn't it?
It's very sad.
It's really sad. It's hard to see it.
Yeah, and
I,
hopefully we'll get through this. And just a lot of things going on right now that you kind of shake your head and are like, what, is there a right or wrong answer?
I kind of feel like we're a city in crisis, and I don't know the answer, and I don't think it's
Hmm.
any one person's problem
Right.
cause, but it's hard to see it.
It is. It
So,
is
what
very
about
hard.
running for public office?
Karen, uh, I know we both talked about that at one time, and I know you're on the board.
No, I'm
And
not anymore.
oh, you're not.
No,
Okay,
no, I
so
turned off.
you're turned off. Okay, but at one time, I thought it was a good idea, and then taking in respect for my father, my wife, and some close friends, and they kind of made me open up and think, Joe, it's a lose lose for you, and I kind of see what they're talking about.
Well, you do have a target on your back.
Yeah, you do. And then with my retail, you know, presence downtown, I just don't know if it would benefit me. And I try to take care of my employees and try to do the right thing. I'm very thick-skinned, but I'm not good at taking criticism for other people that are close to me, family and employees and stuff like that. And I just don't know how I could handle that. So I felt like it was best for me not to do it. But I do care about St. Augustine. That's why I have some presence on King Street, and I want to make it better. And I plan on living out my final years here, and I got some other ideas, and I'll try to help when I can and everything. But it's just one of those things that I just think at this time with what I have going on in public office doesn't really suit me.
Yeah, it's hard when you own businesses and you have a big
Yeah,
business presence because you're going to take hits, and
sure.
you also have to be careful that you don't vote on something that could be considered as benefiting your
Hmm.
businesses. But
And
when you're
and that
downtown presence, when is that not the
well,
case?
that's exactly, and that's the main problem is that people are going to look at me and say, hey, you know, he's benefiting himself by approving this or something like that. And there's a lot of things that just little things I've been involved in. We were trying to bring the carousel back at one time, and we couldn't get anybody to take it, to be honest with you. But I thought about kind of doing it on my own. I said, you know what, people are just going to look at me like, why is he doing that? There's got to be some benefit, and I don't want to, make it look like a personal gain when it's something to do like that.
So take me back. So you were doing real estate.
Hmm.
How did that morph into what you have now?
Well, I was always, I had to make a living. At that time I was trying to, make a living, pay the bills, and the service station industry, especially back then, was not very glamorous. And so, it was truly, you go work on cars, you smell like
Yep.
grease,
Yep.
you work weekends.
Yep.
We were a 24-hour operation, and I was just an employee for my stepdad at that time. This is, like I said, my very early 20s. And so when I got my license, I thought that this could be more of an executive type role for me.
Yeah.
And
You
I
think
thought,
it's what you should be doing,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
When you're growing up, you think that.
But the problem with real estate, as you well know, and that's what I always compliment people like yourself that are very successful with it, because it's hard to get going,
It is.
especially in these days.
It
I
is.
mean, I hear people now talking about they're spending 10,000 a month as an agent just to advertise. I mean, and to me, that I can't even comprehend how you can compete with that if you're getting in the business. And so
It's very
I'm
difficult.
not real patient, and I wasn't, patient back then, and it's probably getting worse now. So I did that for 3 or 4 years. I did keep my license active for many years after that. So when I finally realized I wasn't going to make a living doing that, I went back to my stepdad, and he hired me kind of back, and said, he was so great on letting me kind of work through things, and never had any issues as far as me personally. But he's the kind of guy that never hold any grudges, like you left me for this, and now you're on your own. He would bring me back wholeheartedly, hoping to get me back engaged. So that's
Well,
what he did.
I think when you're young, you have to be allowed the freedom to make mistakes and
Yeah,
find yourself.
right.
You have to, as a parent, you have to let your kids do that
Hmm.
as well. You can't, they don't always follow the path that you want, and you've got to let them make mistakes.
Sure.
I'd
And
rather have them make it at 20 than
oh,
at 50,
exactly.
right?
That's right. And I think, there was some time that I think my real father wanted me to go get a work for somebody that was going to give me benefits in the future. Go get a job, maybe such as Grumman or something like that. But, you know, a Shell station came available in Jacks Beach, and it was a lease. And back then, even a lease was over 100,000, because you had to buy the inventory, deposits, you had to pay the guy something. Didn't include the real estate. So my stepdad called me up and said, "Hey, there's a Shell station available." He says, and I was excited about it because I thought that he was going to assist me in getting that thing, and he knew I could do it, but he just didn't know if I was, um, you
It
know,
will.
it will, and not only that, just mature enough to
Yeah.
do it, because I wasn't really what he called the best employee out there at the time.
But listen, in your 20s, that's still really
Yeah,
young.
but he didn't want to risk that himself, and also he said if you do it, I think you need to do it on your own. And I started thinking about it. I said, how am I ever going to do that? I mean, I literally, Karen, had less than $3,000 to my name. No girlfriend, no. Actually, I think I just started dating Cindy, but I had nothing. And I'm 23 years old. This was in '86 or '7. So my real dad said, "I'm going to help you out," and I really respected him for that. He said, "I'm going to go to the bank. I'm going to help you get a personal loan. I'm going to co-sign for you," because he was, my father was very frugal growing up, and he lived at a different time, and he saved his money. He invested it. He bought mortgages, and he always had the ability
Yeah.
to do things. Even, I mean, I look back now, I mean, he was like 40 something, and he was able to help me buy a gas station. So I mean, that's a big compliment to him. So the owner was having heart palpitations, who I was buying the Shell station from in Jacks Beach, and he technically financed part of it as a personal note because there was no real estate involved. And my father went to the bank and co-signed for me a note, and between the two, I was able to get it. Scared to death. I mean,
And
I
wasn't
truly,
that intimidating to go to Jack's Beach too? I mean, that's
at the time I
Jacksonville's
thought
different
it
than
is,
St.
and
Augustine.
it was a rougher area. They call it the Hill, but at the time I thought it was great because St. Augustine's such a small city. Jacks has the tall buildings and Jacks Beach and all that stuff, but it was the worst thing. I mean, I remember those 2 years. It was the worst feeling because I was getting married, baby was on the way, and it was just I was scared to death, but I made it work, and it taught me a lot, and it made me mature,
I'll bet it
extremely
did.
quick.
Yeah.
So um, I was thinking about Connor Shell. Reed Connor's always been a family friend, and they had that station since '69. Talking to him one day, and he's like, "I don't know how much longer I want to do this. I want to be a school teacher," and he went through and had his teaching degree and everything. And like I said, back then there was no real estate involved with the stations. You just leased from the oil companies. So I sold mine up there. I made some money on it. I was able to pay off my father, pay off the guy that, and had a little bit of cash left over. Reed Connor was nice enough to help me buy his out. He was over it, but yet he, he really wanted the monthly income. So at 26 or 7, I bought this place, and my stepfather retired 10 years later, and I ended up buying his. And at one time, I had 5 leases, so no real estate. And in this business,
That's a lot to manage.
it was a lot to manage, and I was, I really put my time in. I look back and think about what I've gone through to get where I'm at now, because the leases aren't where it's at. What you want to do is own the dirt,
Right.
Own the
Right.
real estate. So Shell wanted the one at 16, and I had a lease on that, so I talked them into selling me the real estate here at 146 King Street, and they sold me the real estate. I gave them up. I gave that one to them. And I ended up buying. I don't know if there's a little Shell station north of town. I bought that real estate with the tire store behind it, and we owned the tire store across the street. It used to be a Goodyear.
So how do you decide from owning gas stations to putting in a retail shop and a pizza place? And when was that just because the industry was morphing?
Yeah, it's more or less evolvement of this type of industry. Cars. I know you have a Tesla, I believe. There's no way that we can help you with your car, and most places can't. But even a Volvo, when you have 3 repair bays in a gas station, it's just not feasible to buy all the equipment, the train the techs, when you can only work on so many cars. Mm-hmm. So the industry started changing with, the stores getting bigger. A lot of them put car washes, and then you started seeing the food services come in there. So originally in '98, when I bought the real estate, I decided to add a big convenience store to the side and also keep the repair bays. And a lot of people thought that was a bad move because of the expense of making it work. So at first I put a convenience store on the far side, kept the bays, and after a couple of years, it kind of started doing really, really well. I was exceeding my goals for the store part. And I said, I see this, and the business was evolving. I mean, the stores, started getting bigger and bigger. And so you started seeing that, hey, the bays are probably, or the repair part of it, are probably a thing of the past. And people are going to start going really heavy to the dealerships or these service centers and stuff like that. So I ended up coming up with a plan with Carmelo's, and I said I need a food service in here because at the time Wawa was popular in those kind of places. A friend of mine who was in the pizza business, and me being Italian, I thought pizza would be difficult, and it is difficult because we make everything from scratch at Carmelo's, and when you're trying to make
pizza.
well, thank you for that. Yeah,
I love it.
But it's really an art to take a dough ball and to spread it in less than a quarter of an inch thickness, consistently in under 2 minutes, and even
I actually know that because I've tried to make homemade pizza,
it's
the crust,
sure.
and I can't do it.
And I mean, as long as I've been in the business, I can make you and I pizza, but I can't make 35, 40 pizzas an hour, and it's amazing what those guys can do. So I was going to do a sub shop, but subs are one of those things that you can get a sub anywhere. I felt like I needed to create a destination where people said, let's drive to eat there. And so I wanted to do everything the right way. And a lot of people thought at first that I'm going overboard with it because, Domino's and those places, they sell, a lot less expensive pizza. I'm not going to say that they're bad because I eat Domino's and Pizza Hut still.
And it's also not really a location that you'd think would work for it,
right.
To be frank.
And back then, it wasn't like it is now. I mean, it's really changing now. I mean, I'm in a good place at a good time now because you got to remember back then, before the police station was there, it was a rough area.
Mm-hmm.
It was really rough.
Mm-hmm.
And the bus station was where Georgie's is. And so, and this was before Carmelo's. But so I was kind of concerned about it because of the amount of money I spent on the renovation. I mean, I spent a fortune, and it was almost worth me to knock it down. But if I was to knock it down, I'd lose my driveway cuts and have to change a lot with retention and all. So I kind of hodgepodged it, and it's worked out great. I mean, we have one of the highest grossing stores, food services, in the whole Northeast Florida.
Oh, good for you, Joe. I feel like you've created almost like a bodega, a little neighborhood market.
Yeah.
And you're catering to the Flagler College students as well,
Sure.
which is wonderful because it's difficult for them to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So you've got their business, and then you're a gas station convenience store selling boar's head.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it used to be a joke where people would come and say, "We're going to go eat pizza at a gas station," because gas station pizza doesn't have the best reputation.
Right.
But we've won best pizza 9 years in a row.
I
in
know,
Best of
it's
St Augustine,
yeah.
and because we make it from scratch, is typically, most places are going to do some shortcuts, but everything we do is literally, the sauce, the dough, we do it the right way.
So did you learn how to do all of that, or did you hire someone who knew what they were doing?
I hired somebody in the beginning, and then I just kind of wanted to learn it to some degree, and so I hired a guy that was basically from Italy, and I got with my aunt who was alive at the time, and she helped me with a little bit with the recipe, and he had some of his own. We just kind of put it together, and basically we use the best ingredients. We use grande cheese, we use Stanislaw tomato products and stuff like that. And I think that that's part of it too. The restaurant business is so finicky,
and such thin margins too.
Yeah, it's thin margins. Overall, the net's real small on it, but it's pretty simple concept, and everything I've ever done, because I've never felt like I was the smartest person. I just feel like that I can take something that's simple and make it a little bit better. And a lot of it's service related, but if you use great products, you're starting out with that, with a recipe, it really doesn't add a whole bunch more to your food costs, yet your ending product is going to be so much more inferior, and so it usually pays off as a great form of advertising. But what I do is not hard. I mean, I'm selling Twinkies and Cokes and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of places do it. What you got to do is put your own spin on it.
Well, the other thing I'll say about Carmelo's and the Shell station is that when you go in, it's spotless. It's not a gas station.
Well, it's
absolutely spotless.
Yeah, and we have a full-time cleaning guy.
Yes.
And you almost need that with the traffic we have. But Karen, I want people to recognize you by your name, and so I try to keep. Like any business, we have a turnover rate. I think ours overall is a lot less than most of them in the same industry. But we want it to be comfortable for the customer, and so we try to hang on to people. And I got 4 great managers who manage the Burger House and Carmelo's, and so it's a lot of work for them. I mean, people don't realize this, but we have between 90 and 100 employees.
Well, I was going to ask you that, how many people you employ, because you branched out and bought 123 Burgers location and turned that into a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you are thinking the restaurant industry is working out pretty well, which is it's a tough industry to make it in.
Right.
And I think both your daughters run that for you, or?
No, I got Brittany, my oldest daughter. She works at Carmelo's, but she's got 2 kids now. And my youngest daughter, she works at Carmelo's. And she also we used to have a barn. We did weddings, and the guy I sold the barn to, she stayed on with him, so she's running that for him. And it's not always perfect for your daughters to come and get involved in the business.
Right.
And I respect that because, first of all, it's hard. It's a family business and all. And I think that they both want to kind of branch out and do their own thing to some degree. Later in life, maybe they'll come back and get more engaged in it, but they're a big help. I couldn't do it without them. And I couldn't do it without my wife. I mean, my wife comes in and looks at things, and she does her part. And like I said, both my daughters do their part, and I do my part, so it works out for us.
So are you now running the 123 Burger House?
I'm not running anything anymore. I'm not involved in operations. I'm kind of just enjoying my grandkids.
Good for you.
But, I'm trying to, for the last 3 or 4 years, life has been good for me, because I've put some people in the right positions. And I think my strength is I'm a problem solver. And I think that, I don't do anything special. I'm good at surrounding myself with the right people to make me look better and make my business look better. And I think that's just on how you treat people. I really do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you bought the Giggling Gator next to 123.
Uh-huh.
Are you willing to tell us any of your ideas?
There's been so many, and most of them were restaurant related.
And I have to tell you, I know some of the history on that, and it came before planning and zoning once or twice. But I think people appreciate that you didn't buy it and reopen it as a full service, full alcohol bar.
There was no way I would have done that. Like I said, it was a need.
That's not what the town wanted.
Sure, and
no offense to the Giggling Gator people,
right.
But it just we've evolved into that wasn't.
Sure,
the
it's like the Whetstone's Chocolate Building. that it was time when we sold that to the Whetstones. We knew it wasn't going to be a garage anymore. That's a 12-bay garage facility. It doesn't belong in downtown St. Augustine.
Right.
It's just time for it to be something different.
Right.
And what they've done is great. It just fits in with the train stop there, and it's what people want that are visitors that come here.
So what are some of the general ideas for the Giggling Gator space?
They're so crazy that I don't want people to think that I'm really crazy, but I think I want to put a little more thought in them, because I can tell you that they're not restaurant related. But I got a couple ideas that people are going to be like, I can't believe he would do that there. But they're things
actually,
that are,
I don't think they'll think that, Joe.
Yeah.
I think they'll think, oh, here comes Joe Tringali with another crazy business idea that's going to work.
The thing I got to take in consideration, though, Karen, because I'm 56 years old, is that I don't want my lifestyle to change, and I feel so responsible that I don't want to have to worry about the labor force. And if, as you know, every industry is suffering with that, and it's amazing with COVID going on how many jobs that people are still trying to get filled. It's just hard. I mean, you think that people would be knocking your door down left or right, but my managers are working so many hours because there's just not a good workforce out there.
I know. Isn't that strange? I'm hearing that from all the restaurant owners, that they're having trouble finding people again.
But think about, Karen, when we were growing up, and you're younger than me, so
I
when
don't
we were
actually
growing
know.
up, well, you look younger.
We're the same age.
You look younger. So, but when we were growing up, if we didn't work, we probably either had to depend on our parents. I mean, I'm talking about
that wasn't an option for us back
exactly.
then.
It wasn't an option.
Parents weren't going to do that.
But now there's so much entitlement, and I find it with everybody. I mean, we do it as parents these days. But when I was growing up, my stepdad and my dad, they gave me $500 to buy a car. Well, back then that wasn't a lot of money. And they said, look, when you buy a car at 16 years old, you're going to have insurance and gas. Well, just in me raising my kids, and of course my kids were a lot better in school and everything, I wanted to help them more. But both my parents had the ability to do more, but it was more of a learning lesson. You get out there and work, and you got to figure out what you're going to do. Well, what I did is went and bought me a real fancy truck, and I couldn't play sports because I had a truck payment, and they were nice enough to co-sign for me, but I had to work. When I got out of school, I had to be at the Shell station at 16 years old and work till 8 or 9 at night, and so I didn't study, and it was almost a trap, and I've never got out of that trap where I always had to work, because I always liked toys, I mean, it's just one of those things,
Well, yeah, and like I said, looking back on when I was younger, everybody I knew worked. We just did, and we worked from a young age, doing babysitting or helping around the house, mowing lawns and
But
things.
something's wrong, though, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is that we'll have people come in the station, they'll pull out an EBT card, and they will buy the groceries that are allowed on that, which are not pre-made groceries, nothing hot. You can buy, candy bars, you can buy energy drinks and stuff like that, which to me is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then they will pull out $8 or $9 and buy a pack of Virginia Slims.
Right.
And then they'll say, give me 2 number 20s, which are $20 lottery tickets. And I'm thinking,
right,
what is wrong with this picture when these people the lottery's not going to be a good return on your money, let's face it. There's a few people that's been lucky, but, it's not probably the best way to get out of a financial crisis,
Yeah.
But we find that more often now. We find that people they can survive without having to work. And it's sad to me that that's the attitude, because even at 56 years old, I worry about my daughters and my granddaughters about, will they have the work ethic? Because let's just say something happened to me, or something happened to my industry that was out of my control. I mean, this COVID thing really made a lot of people.
It's scary.
I know you've been fortunate, and I've been very fortunate with it, but there's a lot of places that haven't. So.
Yeah. I think that's the challenge for people who have had some success in life, and a lot of people who have had some success in life that I know anyway started out without a lot of help. They didn't, there wasn't a silver spoon in their mouth like we think happens.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the people that I know have been successful have really done it on their own.
Exactly.
But then once you have that success and your children grow up in a nice home and, they've got things, then how do you teach them to have that drive?
Sure.
Because
They're
can
so
be a little
used
bit
to
complacent.
That's right. And I think, You have a daughter, I know,
I
right?
have two.
You
Yeah,
got two daughters,
yeah.
okay.
Who had to clean their rooms. They had to do yard work. They had
Well,
to, when they got their license, I said, "Here's the insurance bill. If you want to
did you? Good
drive,
for you.
here's
I
your
mean,
insurance."
that's great that you did that because I didn't do that.
You ain't getting in that car till you
That
pay
is
your portion
awesome.
of the insurance.
And I can see that from you being
Yeah,
like that, and
yeah.
that's great. That's the way you should raise your kids. But I think we all become soft, especially a father with daughters. I mean, I remember when my daughters were growing up, I could not, I didn't want them to have to go to work. I wanted to go work harder myself so that I could provide them, a life that where they could have a credit card for gas and I'd pay their car insurance and buy their car. But it's
No,
probably a
I did the
mistake.
opposite,
That's good.
actually. I
I
told
can
them,
see that with you though,
life is
really.
not free, and here's the deal. Here's
Yeah.
what you're going to pay for, and you don't live in this house for free, and
And
but I will tell you, my girls used to say to me, and I homeschooled for 16 years, so they were homeschooled as well. But they would say to me, "Mom, none of our friends have to pull weeds," and I go, "Well, that's too bad."
that's funny because you're like my mom was. My mom had something called work day on Thursdays. We were the only ones in the neighborhood that had to do all the chores. So Thursday was the day where we gutted that house. We did everything. And I had two stepbrothers, and so and my sister at the time, she's 7 or 8 years younger than me, or actually she's 9 years younger than me. So she was too young to do it, but we had to work, and I think that's what groomed me because I will ride by the station if there's a can in the parking lot
You'll
and
pick
it's
it up.
sitting there. If I'm not stopping, I'll call my manager and say, "Hey, there's an aluminum can."
Yeah.
Yet it's probably been there an hour, but it's just how I was brought up.
Yeah.
I was brought up to, make sure that the lights are all working, and it drives me nuts if things aren't organized.
So, of all the things that you've done, what's been your favorite? Is Carmelo's kind of your baby still?
Carmel's is my baby because that's what I'm recognized at. I really had a good time at the barn.
Yeah, talk to me about the barn. I've been there, but a lot of people haven't. It's just a gorgeous property.
It started out
Absolutely gorgeous.
that's in 2011 where things weren't really good, and I was looking at some property to buy and help my daughter buy, my oldest daughter buy, and we got wind that property was for sale, and it was an old borrow pit, and it was 54 acres, and I couldn't imagine owning that much property, and it was at the bank that I do all my business with. So anyway, they told me who owned it. I went and worked out a deal with it before the bank actually got it back and had to foreclose on it, and it was a mess out there. I mean, it had concrete piled up. I mean, it literally had a 15-acre borrow pit on there, and they started dumping everything around the sides and all. But I felt like it had so much potential because it was in the middle of Matanzas State Forest.
Yeah.
So the original plan was that it was so big, and me being pretty much growing up in the city, for most of my life and living in Marsh Creek, that me and my two daughters, we would build a barn and we would build 3 private residences out there, and we'd have animals and everything and all. And then we built this barn. My daughter got engaged, and of course the barn wasn't supposed to be like it was. It was going to be a big barn, but it wasn't going to be that fancy. So I kept making it different, and it was a tough time for me. I mean, even though it was only 7 years ago, I went way overboard. I mean, way overboard out there because
yeah, it's gorgeous.
And so
you say barn. That's not an accurate description.
Yeah, it's not a barn. I found that out at the county. When they came out, looked, I said, "This isn't a barn." But and then we started looking at everything. We started wondering if that was the best thing for us to do because, I need activity, and my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter would have been fine out there. It's just that I just thought that because we could never split it up, would this be really the best thing to do? So then we turned it into a wedding venue, and we had a lot of success with that. We were doing weddings, we were doing charity events. I was donating, and it was making me feel good. We were doing, the Derby run for hospice out there and everything. So we were having a good time out there, but it was so much work for me. And
you're the one who would go out and mow.
I cut the grass.
Yeah,
I
which
did
is
everything.
There's a lot of grass.
Karen, I was spending 30
hour.
hours a week out there. Yeah. And it got to a point where in the summertime, I'd come back and I could actually literally see the grass grow. And I had a mower that's like 5 feet wide, and people would say, "Why don't you buy a big tractor?" And I'm like, I'm tired of dumping money in this place, So I just kept getting on my mower like Forrest Gump and going back and forth for 2 days a week, And then it's just got to be so much work. And of course, I had it for sale, but it's one of those things that it's almost like a white elephant. There's only a few people that want something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to really let go of it just to let go of it. And so a great guy named Chris Shee, I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah, I
him,
know
but
Chris.
Mastercraft
Yeah.
Building Group.
Know of him,
He's a
yeah.
giver.
Yeah.
He's a young guy. He's smart as he can be.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up buying it from me, and he's going to build a private residence out there. He's doing pretty much the same thing I was doing. He's doing a bunch of charity events. He's got such a big heart that it kind of was a continuation. And he told me, he said, Joe, he says, I'm going to keep it at the Tringali barn if you don't mind. I said, Chris, I said, I don't mind, but create your own legacy. He said, no, he said, I'm going to call it Heritage Farms, but I'm going to call it the Tringali barn because you created this. And I said, well, I said, I appreciate that. But, he's just such a good guy. So it worked out great for both of us. I was just kind of over it. I wasn't, it wasn't, I'm the kind of guy that's all got to make sense number-wise. I mean, I'm a numbers guy. And for me to go hire somebody as a caretaker, it just wasn't feasible, And I didn't want to sit there and put any more money into it than I was putting into it. So
it's an incredible place.
It is a neat place. It's a unique place, but as you know, for that kind of money, you get 54 acres with a giant barn on it and a 15-acre pond. You got no neighbors, but there's very few people that want that. But they'll go to the ocean, buy a 50-foot oceanfront lot with a 2,500 square foot house on there and pay that same money all day long.
Yeah. Yes, I do know that.
Yeah. But I think the biggest problem was that there was going to be a lot of disagreement with my happiness out there compared to my wife and my daughters, and it put us in a situation where we didn't have many options if things didn't work out. And I didn't never want to put that kind of stress on either daughter. When you got to sell something as a whole, and they got their homes out there, and then it's just one of those
and that would have
things
made it even more difficult to sell.
Sure.
Now you got 2-3 really nice houses out there.
That's right.
Who's your buyer for that?
And then let's just say even more than that. Let's say your daughter doesn't want to leave. I mean, you're stuck out there because it's just one of those things that just felt like it. It was a good idea on paper, but when we started thinking about it, and then I love where I live now because the boats come by. And there's people riding their bikes by, and that's what I need,
So, have you ever failed at anything that you've tried to do?
All the time. I've wasted more money on stupid stuff. My wife reminds me of that a lot, and a lot of us do it.
That's what we're here for.
Well, I mean, I got involved in that whole real estate flip thing, and like I said before, if it wasn't that I had a good income from my retail operations, I would have lost properties. But I was just hanging in there and making payment. I mean, I had plenty of condos that I sold for 50% of what I paid for them, because I got stuck with them just like a lot of people did.
Yeah, when the market crashed, and nobody thought that was going to happen.
And then, I've done a couple other things that, at one time, me and 3 other guys, we brought the World Gym to town, the one that was originally on US 1. And so that didn't work out for me, but that was more or less over the partnership. I'm not probably really good with partners because I'm so driven and I'm a hard worker, and I expect everybody to be that thing. So with partnerships, it's tough. It's almost, I need to fly solo and let my wife and kids help me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
I've worked for people or worked for entities before, and it just didn't really work out well because I always said, well, why do you have to do it that way? Couldn't we do it this way?
Sure. Well,
why don't we try this?
There's always a better way to do things. And what gets me is that when people go in there and they're just happy with what, where they're at. And I always look at, we can make this better than that. And if they don't have that same, goal and same vision, it's hard to be a partner,
Right.
So
do you think your grandchildren are going to take over any of it?
They are
got
so
any
cute.
little entrepreneurs?
They are something else. I mean, where they got it from, I'm not
how
sure.
Old are they?
I got a 5-year-old granddaughter named Ansley who's a barrel horse rider, and she's only about 35 pounds at the most. She's tiniest 5.5-year-old you've ever seen. I got a 10-month-old grandson, and so we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm still hoping my daughters jump in there one day, but
Do you think they will?
I don't know. I think that they're still. I mean, Brittany just turned 30, so she's got 2 kids, and that needs to be her focus, her family. And I think that one day, that once she's done with all her doing what she likes to do right now with her young kids and all, I think she might, But the good thing is, what I do, Karen, for a living, as long as my mind stays sharp, I can do it forever, and that's what I like about it. Because I'm not good at sitting still. I'm a project person, so I need projects.
Well, so I was going to ask you, do you feel like Carmelo's is going to stay where it's at for quite a while?
I think so. You know, it's never. I've never thought about selling it.
Well, that's good because
Um,
I live pretty close to it, so it's pretty pretty damn
you
handy
know,
for me, Joe.
and I just think that I just like to see the evolvement of what's happening downtown St. Augustine. I want to be part of that. And I can make adjustments as I need to enhance downtown. I mean, I think they're still talking about redoing King Street.
Yes, that's on the
Yeah, and I think it's
in the
coming up
pipeline.
fairly within the next couple of years, and I'm excited about whatever they're going to do with the property behind the studio here. It's just kind of becoming a neat place. The fish camp has really changed the whole feel. The distillery. It's just I want to be part of that.
Well, who knows? Maybe the police station goes somewhere. I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised. Chief Fox is a good friend of mine, and I know they have a parking issue.
it's not really the best place for a police
It's not the best
station.
place anymore. When they did it, it really cleaned up and enhanced that side. I would see it one day going on the west side of US 1,
Yeah,
somewhere over there. I mean, I
yeah,
know there was talk where Browdy's was talking about redeveloping his
right,
property and,
right,
and making a
right.
police station there for the. So I'm sure something will happen to where, but I don't know if it'll be 2 years or 5 years.
What do you think about the evolution of St. Augustine since you've lived here your whole life? Do you feel like there's some what are the good things that you've seen?
You know, most locals do not like all the activity and the traffic, and some of the real deep locals are just like, I don't go downtown anymore. I find it exciting. But again, I need to the way my mind works. I need to have constant change. So I love to go downtown. I love to see the people. I love the nights of lights. I love the fact and not do anything with how business is, because more people usually means more business for us. But just if I didn't have businesses down here, this is where I'd want to live.
Yeah, I live downtown,
Yeah,
close to Carmelo's actually, and I love living in a vibrant urban core.
that's the same way I am.
But I knew that that's what I moved to, right?
Right.
I was in a gated HOA community that was super quiet
Uh-huh.
and was almost artificial. I love
Same
the
way.
vibrancy of the downtown. I love
I do
Flagler
too.
College students walking
Uh-huh.
by.
Yep.
I live pretty close to the fire station, not far from the police
Mhm.
station. I don't mind those sirens at all. I just love the vibrancy. And when my dogs bark, no one cares.
Yeah, I like it too because like I said, we have a house in Marsh Creek, and that's never been really my style. It was great when our kids were small because it was safe. I just don't like the whole gated thing
With rules.
with rules. I mean, I got so many certified letters because my garage blinds fell off the garage. I'm thinking to myself, really, and just stuff like that. I mean, I can see it, but I just love downtown. I mean, but again, I can go sit on a bench and just people watch.
Yeah.
I love Las Vegas for that reason. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to live there, but I love to go to Vegas because I like the constant change. It's never the same. You
Well,
know.
yeah, having lived there, I can tell you when I go back now, it is not the same
Oh, I
at
know.
all. Not the same. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first moved there, I moved when I was 25 and single with my dog, and flew in, and I was going to stayed with a friend for a while, but I got a cab from the airport to my friend's house. Never been to Vegas before. So this old cabbie was telling me, he asked me what I was there for. I said, I just moved here. And so he said, listen, buy real estate. He said, when I moved here in the 60s, my brother wanted to buy a piece of land, and it was way out in the middle of nowhere. And he took me out there, and it took 20 minutes, outside of town to get there. And I said, I'm not buying this with you. No, this is never going to amount to anything. And he said, right now, that land is Rainbow and Sahara, which at that time was the vibrant part of the city.
Sure.
And he said, I never thought that would amount to anything. And there
Look
you
at
go.
it. I know. My stepdad was telling me that he had a friend that he knew that had a Shell station that is kind of where, I guess it's kind of where Monte Carlo was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something
Mm-hmm.
different now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was right there, and he held out and held out and held out until the end. And I think CVS came in there and gave him like $20 million.
Yeah.
And that was like 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But just the time came where they were just building these tall buildings, and he had this little old shell station with repair garage bays. He just stayed there but it's definitely a place where if you were there at the right time.
Yeah, it was fun when we lived
Yeah.
there. But we're a little town here, so we'll never become that. But we
Thank
gotta
God.
evolve,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But to have the water running through there and the history that we have, and it's just such a neat place. I mean, we are so fortunate to live here, and that's why so many people are moving here. And it always kills me when people are like the politicians need to quit approving these subdivisions, but if they didn't live here and found this town, they'd want to move here too.
Well,
It's
Jerry
that
Dixon used
special.
to always tell me that's the "I'm here now, let's shut the gate behind me" mentality, right?
Yeah, but you can't do that. People have property rights, and it's
Right.
just that that's
The
just why people need
change
more.
happens.
It does. It just does. And I think that pretty much we do a great job, managing that.
Is there anything that you miss about Old St. Augustine, about the St. Augustine
Oh, I
of
miss
your
a
youth?
lot. I miss the Ponce Golf Course. I mean, that was something that was a tragedy to let slide out like it did. I mean, you probably weren't here then, but
No, I was.
oh, you were
Mm-hmm,
okay.
mm-hmm,
But somehow we should have got together and saved that. That was
mm-hmm.
probably the biggest historical. I mean, not as big as the fort and some of the stuff
I
downtown,
think
but
people just didn't realize that
they
it
did.
kind of opened the floodgates to development or the change,
Hmm.
right?
But I mean, we had so many. There was so much history there, and it was just such a great location. And I miss a lot of things. I miss the YMCA being downtown. I mean, just stuff like that. But obviously, it's evolved to something different where that's not the highest and best use, and that's just typical of real estate.
Right.
And so, you know, I miss the shrimping industry. It's just not prevalent in St. Augustine anymore. I mean, we have 4 or 5 shrimp boats, and just a lot of things like that. But there's a lot of improvements. The fish markets used to be here at Sebastian River, Fazio's and Salvador's, and it's just a lot of things that that we had back then. But it's just that's evolving.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming
well,
on,
thanks for
Joe.
having me, Karen.
I really enjoyed
Sorry it
learning
took
more
so
about
long.
it. No. I told you I'm persistent.
So
But I really learned a lot, and I just find it interesting to learn about just more ordinary people's stories.
well,
I
thank you
really
for all you
enjoyed it.
do, and I'm gonna be watching this. I'm not a real big Facebook person, but I'm gonna watch this from now on
Oh, good.
because I
Thank you.
found out a couple days ago. You told me again today you had Chris on there, so I gotta watch that one. I gotta find it.
Yeah, Chris was my first guest
Yeah.
because I knew nobody can spin a story like Chris,
No, that's
So I
for
said, all
sure.
right, he's going to be my first.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've had really interesting people, and I find that my guests give me interesting ideas for other guests.
Good.
So I'm really enjoying just learning
Uh-huh.
about St. Augustine and about its people and things that have happened over the years.
Sure.
I find it really interesting.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Good. Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
So this has been another episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles, the where, the who, and the how they get there. Watch, like, or follow us on Facebook at St. Augustine Chronicles Podcast or at SA Chronicles. You can also find us on YouTube at St. Augustine Chronicles Podcast. Watch, listen, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. We are produced by Pete Melfi at the 904 Now Studios. You can also find us on the 904 Now Facebook page and be on the lookout for new shows every Monday. Thanks for tuning in.